Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, it's a great pleasure to be here talking about an important subject, of course. What are we going to do with the AI revolution? So I'm sure last year someone told you 2025 is the most pivotal year in history. And I'm sure someone would tell you exactly the same thing next year. But think about this. We are the last generation before AI, the last generation that used purely human cognitions. We're just writing and thinking by ourselves in some ways. And I'm sure you remember all these sci-fi movies where someone is talking to a computer, and 10 years ago, that felt weird. And now, any movie where you don't talk to a computer feels weird. It's kind of funny. Is this a sci-fi movie or Elon Musk's last presentation? It's very funny. We changed the world. So today I'm going to talk about AI, of course, the internet, the lessons I've got, and what should we do about it. So very briefly, I've done different things. I've been working in France, in Silicon Valley, but I'm mostly known to be part of what was called the Web 2.0 era. So that's me in green with the founder of Twitter, Google Docs, Wikipedia, etc. It was an incredible time because we could build things. And in some ways, today is very similar. So this is NetVibes and this is Jolly Cloud. I was also very early on because Google always had a product competing with us. So it's an interesting situation. So as I said, we're the last generation before AI. And the mission for us is, of course, all of us to succeed at this transition. We have to get it right. We don't have a second chance, unfortunately. And we have to do this while we're living, as you know, in a very turbulent and uncertain world. So, in a nutshell, I'm going to go very quickly here because I think all of us understand that technology changed geopolitics, and geopolitics is also changing technology. This is a new environment we have to live in. And before getting to the AI, I'd like to give you a few lessons from what I used to call the old internet, because I think there's a lot of interesting insight from this. So the internet, sorry, I'm going to be here so everyone can see properly. The internet is, as a good theater piece, a three-act story. The first one was the growth story. It's very interesting because, as you probably remember, everybody talked about the dot-com crash. By the way, it was not a dot-com crash. It was actually a telecom crash. We have built so much infrastructure, and nobody was using it. It probably means something today also because we're talking about similar things in the AI space. But something interesting happened. You know, Google was a small company, and nobody knew about it until they published their first request to go to public. And people understood the most important thing of the internet. The value was not in the infrastructure. The value was in the software. And Google had invented one of the biggest cache machines of all time. And what is interesting is that allowed us to come to the second stage, this consolidation, the rise of big tech. And the most interesting thing is that two technologies, the mobile and the cloud, allowed anyone to build a startup and be able to scale. So suddenly we were like having millions of users, and because of the cloud and because of the mobile, you could have companies like Uber who could be global almost in a day, because the technology was, and software was the value creator. The real secret of this era was the cloud capital, the idea that somewhere you have data centers, they cost hundreds of millions, but then you run software that generates billions that you rent. This is what we usually call software as a service. These people made a fortune because, of course, they were providing all the tools to create that ecosystem. But the reality is that you were basically in two situations. Either you pay the rent to your software, or you collect the rent. And this has completely changed the dynamic of the world because you basically had two spaces, the US and China, who basically were providing the technology, the cloud, the services, the app store, the operating system, etc., etc. everyone else is basically purchasing technology. That's an incredible model. This is the model we've built. The question we should ask ourselves is, now that we have AI, is it the same thing? Is it the same business model? Is it as profitable as it used to be? It's a very interesting question, because when you think about it, the internet has basically two models. I simplified, it's bundle or unbundling. Before you have the cable, you pay a certain amount, you have all the channel, and then you have Netflix who say, you know what, now we're going to pay less and you have specific services. So these are always coming, we always switch from bundling, unbundling. You have all-in-one, and then you have to pay all the apps, et cetera, et cetera. And the other thing that is interesting is when you build a company, you have to think about two things. Either you build on top of someone. Let's say you do an app on the App Store. You're building on top of the Apple ecosystem. Or you decide to create the entirety of your business, and you control the entirety of the business. These are the two main ways of creating products. In the age of AI, if you remember 2 years ago when someone told you, I have an AI company, what they actually meant is, we've built the product on top of OpenAI, and it actually create some intelligence. The problem, of course, is that this can be cut. Now, with the open source revolution, and this is very important, you can have your own system that you control entirely. You can say, in my company, or as a country, we have our own AI, and I'll come to that a bit later. Of course, the question of the platform is always the same. Is it open, or is it closed? If you take the App Store, today, if you want to publish an app, you need the permission of Apple to get it out. If you're using the web, no one's permission. You can just start doing things. Similar thing happened in the AI. So in short, you have two models. You have the closed model, which started with OpenAI and Claude, and the open model with open source. And it's interesting to have both, because you need to have a balance between I do not control anything with I control everything. The question is, we are entering an age where the old model, you're only allowed to do things on top of OpenAI or Claude. Now you can actually build everything yourself. So this number has changed. It was $1 trillion, $3 trillion, now it's $10 trillion. It's probably going to be 15. But the question is, of course, how do we make money? This is, you know, of course, this thing. Is it a bubble? Is it a realignment of capital? At the moment, there's about 2,000 data centers being built around the world. Everybody wants to be part of it. Everybody wants to get there. The question is, who will be succeeding? This is an interesting question. The reality is, the reason AI is so interesting is, first of all, a lot of people believe that the next hard problems of the world can only be solved by AI. You know, new antibiotics, anything that is complicated, you just use a lot of GPUs and you throw this problem and you get it solved. There's also the idea now, you know, with CloudBot and the agentic, the idea that AI can let you do things, that someone, just by himself, with an army of AI, can create $1 billion company. Everybody in Silicon Valley is working on this and talking about this. And of course, you have a synthetic workforce. You could say in army that drones are actually an AI, a synthetic workforce. You're going to have support, anything, task that you could do with humans, now you can expand with AI. And a lot of people have a strong belief that, especially now with the technology, you will be able to at least expand your crowd. So the funny thing about AI, there's the two things you need to understand, is that the system still works. You put a lot of data, you put a lot of money in GPUs, you put it up, and it works. And so far, we call it the law of scale. This law still works, even today. The funny thing is, and this is the most important thing to understand, is how people build startups now because of that. So I'll give you an example of a company called Lovable. Lovable is a company, you just type, I want to do this app, you describe the app, and it generates the app. When they started, they used the old version of Claude, you know, Anthropic model. The product was good. They didn't change anything in their product. Claude comes to Claude 4, and now, by the way, it's Claude 4.5. They don't change anything about the product, and suddenly the product is 10 times better. The interesting thing is, if I was taking an automotive comparison, it's you just focus on the outside, and the engine is provided. And you start with like a small car, and now you have a Porsche, and then you're going to have a Ferrari, and then a plane. Every time the models improve, the software improves. And a lot of people today are building startups around this idea. Of course, to win the battle, you need all the talents, all the data. We're running out of data in 2030, all the compute, and of course, all the energy. So the thing about AI, it requires cooperation and regulation, and of course, you need to be agreeing on what's going on. And the question is, we have to agree on what's going on in a very unpredictable world. Come to the third act, the breakup phase. We're in an interesting place. We have conversation around deglobalization, the splinternet. I'll come and speak a little bit about innovation divergence and also the AI capital debt. But this is, by the way, the journey of a chip. You know, we always say a chip is only Taiwan and the US. No, of course. The laser you need for ASML is made in California. The lens is made in Germany. You have hundreds of companies. It is a global cooperation. Without this, no chips. The other interesting thing, as you're probably aware, is that the internet used to be a commercial place. Now it's almost a militarized place. You know, we have submarine cables who've been, undersea cables have been severed. You have an incredible activity around this. But what I'd like to point out is what happened with DeepSeek, because a lot of people talk about, you know, DeepSeek it's a cheaper version of OpenAI, etc. The reality is, when I was doing web, the idea was Silicon Valley is doing something, and everyone else is copying. And suddenly, in China with this model, they innovated differently. And now, if you're using ChatGPT, when you see the thinking of the machine, this is an innovation that came, of course, from this. So now, innovation will be different in different places around the world. And the question today is also which kind of ecosystem you want to be in. Do you want to be in an OpenAI, NVIDIA? Do you want to be in a DeepSeek, Huawei, Kimi? And I think people will actually look at both and become what I call swing states. You can lean into one or to the other. But it's an interesting situation right now as a decision you have to do. The other thing I'd like to talk about is the fact that if intelligence is, think about it, now we have to pay to think. This is the new model. And as a country, you want to make sure that every citizen has access to this. So do you make it a public infrastructure? Is it a private infrastructure? These are questions that are happening right now. When OpenAI talked about a bailout, it's not something they discuss randomly. They understand that AI will be as water, as part of infrastructure. And these are conversations that are happening right now. So I'd like to give you a sneak peek of what's happening in 2026. A lot of people believe that they should be in control of AI with the question of digital sovereignty and all these issues. This is a box you can buy today. You put it in your home, and you have your own AI system out of the box. You don't need anyone else. If the internet is cut, it still works. And this is the same thing for enterprise. You're going to see more and more people doing this. And there's one reason. Because the running of AI, what we call the inference cost, is going up to the roof. So if you want to control the investment you do, you want to make sure that you have your own data center. I'll give you an example of a university. You want all your students to learn vibe coding. If you use a regular commercial plan, it's going to cost a lot of money. But if you actually have your own data center, it's like a buffet. You can have it as much as you want, and you can have people use it as much as you want. The number one issue of AI this year is how to reduce the cost and controlling your infrastructure. This is going to be a very interesting thing, but we need stable area to innovate. And we're going to see this year locally grown AI, and all the tools are here. Thank you so much.